Melusine by Lynne Banks, Chapter 19, The Shrine in the Tower. At long last, Roger's torch beam, now weakening seriously, showed a break in the roof of the tunnel ahead. A few moments later, he was clambering painfully to his feet. His father had to use him as a sort of post to haul himself up by. "God, that was fairly ghastly, wasn't it?" he muttered. "Didn't you think it was going on forever? I'll never be the same man again. I ache all over." "I thought it was just me," Roger muttered back. "Luckily we don't have claustrophobia. Now then, your torch is just about out of juice. Time for mine." He shone the strong beam of the big car torch upward. They could make out a vertical shaft of about 8 or 9 feet with iron rungs up the side. "Isn't this amazing?" said his father. "Do you suppose there's a secret door at the top? Let's hope it opens from this side." He was all eagerness again and practically shoved Roger ahead of him up the ladder, coming up behind him, almost treading on his heels, his hand grasping the rungs alongside Roger's. The iron felt ice cold and rough with rust. Roger kept taking deep breaths, whether from airlessness or scaredness, he wasn't sure, but to see the tower, that would be something. His head bumped against a roof or top through the vertical shaft. "Feel around," said his father, turning to feel the wall behind him. Roger, hanging on the top rung, felt the rounded wall with a free hand. It was very rough, made of undressed stones just piled together, the surface full of jutting out edges and hollows and lumps. Then he noticed something. "There's a curve of this wall goes the wrong way." It was true. The shaft was not cylindrical, but quarter moon shaped. "It's the outer wall of the tower," said his father. "We're not right under the tower, but just outside it. These are the foundations. Come on, feel around more. There's got to be a way in." Roger's holding on arm was tired before they found it. It was actually no more than a loose stone that yielded to a push. They pushed it right through and heard it clatter down on the other side. It left a hole about big enough for Roger to get his head into, but the thickness of the wall prevented his putting it right through. There was pitch darkness on the other side. Even the big car torch could only pick out dim and distant shapes of the stones in the wall. "No secret knobs or moving panels, I'm afraid," muttered his father. "Nothing but ordinary stones. Presumably they just stopped up the entrance each time it was used by shoving the stones back. Come on, let's try enlarging the hole. I bet they didn't use mortar, or if they did, it's probably rotted. Ah, you see?" Another loose rock clattered down from on the far side. Now the hole was big enough for Roger's head and shoulders, but that was not enough. Little by little they eased out other loose stones. Roger found the noise as they fell inside the tower wall unnerving. Might the whole wall collapse?" "I doubt it. This part was made to open. Shine your torch upwards. See that? There's a small arch built into the wall just up there. That's to hold the wall up when the entrance is open. Come on, keep pushing. All these stones are meant to come out. See how it's getting easier?" Recklessly they pushed out stone after stone underneath the arch, and soon the hole was big enough to allow them both to crawl through. Roger went first. He shone the torch downward and saw the ground not 4 feet below. It was heaped with rubble and the loose stones they had dislodged. He was able to scramble down easily, and his father was not far behind him. As I thought, this is a sort of cellar of the tower, the foundations. There's got to be a way up. Ah, there!" He directed Roger's wavering hand. The torch's beam shone squarely onto a narrow flight of steps, curving around the rough inner wall of the tower on the far side. They were like the steps in Welsh country walls, just slabs sticking out without support. At the top was a door. "It'll be locked, bet you," muttered Roger, but his father was already halfway up the steps. "Don't be such a little pessimist," he whispered down. The whisper echoed, like when the girls had made ghost noises in the church. The words seemed to hiss around the damp walls. "Come on!" Roger followed him up, feeling his way against the wall. The stairs were only about 10 inches wide and quite irregular in shape. Roger climbed. He felt really afraid. What if the mortar had rotted, and one of the sticking out slabs gave way? But they'd held his father, who was now at the top examining the door. Roger stifled his fear and climbed up behind him. The drop on his left was now about 12 feet, and there was nothing to hang on to. He closed his eyes, but that was worse, so he opened them again and just touched the back of his father's jacket for stability. His father swore heartily. "You're right, blasted thing's locked, not even a handle on this side." "The hinges aren't on this side either," said Roger. "So it opens away from us. You might try pushing." His father, more out of frustration than any real hope, gave a disappointed buffet onto the wooden door with his shoulder. There was a loud cracking noise. His father stumbled and disappeared. Then there was a crash that rocked the stone ledge Roger was standing on, nearly making him fall off. He threw himself forward onto his knees, and the torch flew out of his hand. He heard it land on the ground below, where it immediately went out. The echoing darkness swallowed him. "Roger!" It was his father's voice, with panic in it, and then he felt a hand on his shoulder, groping and then grasping frantically. He was dragged from the brink of the top step, where he had been sprawled, across the threshold of the door, out of immediate danger. They held on to each other, and each could feel the other's heart pounding, hear the other's gasping breath. "God, I thought you'd fallen. What happened?" "Nothing much. The door fell in, and me with it. The hinges must have been rotten, or the wood, or both. I got such a shock when it gave way. And the crash, someone must have heard." His father released him and drew a deep breath in the pitch darkness. "Oh, I don't think so. It echoes in here, so it sounds much louder. The Serpes wing is divided from the tower by several thick walls. I'm sure nobody heard. What about the torch, Rog?" I dropped it down. I'm sorry." His voice faltered as he added, "Shall I try to go down in the dark? Are you crazy anyway? It's obviously broken. We'll have to feel our way." There was an awful silence. They were both thinking of the steps, of the tunnel, of getting back out in total darkness. Then Roger remembered. "I've still got my torch in my pocket. There's a bit of life left in it." "Oof," his father breathed out in relief. "Thank God for that. Only we must be sparing with it. Shine it now and let's see where we are." Roger fished out the pocket torch and shone it briefly. They were in a round, empty room. It had a wooden floor, another doorway, and there was a narrow window high up. "Switch off," said his father. Roger obeyed. Now that they knew the window was there, they could see a little light coming in from it. As their eyes grew accustomed to the dark, they could see quite well enough to move about the room without the torch. Roger went to the other door first. It opened into a spiral stairway. "Shall we go up?" "Might as well. We've come this far." "Only let me go the first this time." They were both whispering now, aware that they were above ground, on a level with the ogre's kitchen, which was divided from them by nothing but a thick wall. "There must be another door leading outside or into the big kitchen," Roger whispered as they climbed around and around. "That's what I was thinking. It must have been bricked up. Why? Presumably so no one could get in. What's the big secret? Is there one? It's the only place Melusine wouldn't show me. Maybe she didn't know how to get in." "You can get in at the first floor level. I saw the door." "Here's a door," said his father. Roger heard the rasp as his hands moved over wooden boards. "Maybe this is the one you saw from the other side. Was it locked?" "I didn't try it, but I'm sure it was." "This one certainly is, and it's not rotten either. It smells like new wood." They kept climbing, passing a very narrow opening in the wall, the kind Roger called an arrow slit when he saw them in English castles. Looking out, he could see the moon shining over the fields. They were quite high up. "We must be at second floor level now. Hey, here's another door." This time there was a latch. He heard his father clicking it stealthily. Then he felt a draft of warmer air. It carried an odd odor. "What's that smell? Smells like a Catholic church." Yes, that was it. Candles and incense. But how could it be? If Serpe is trying to keep people out of here, he should have locked this too, his father said as he pushed carefully. The hinges emitted a harsh metallic shriek that made Roger jump out of his skin. "Shh, Dad," he hissed. But his father had got over any fears he had felt and was now boldly determined to get his money's worth out of this expedition. He pushed the squeaking door fully open and stepped into the upper room. It was dimly lit by the indirect light of the moon. At first, as they stepped in, They couldn't quite credit what they seemed to see. After all the emptiness, it was so strange. They thought the room was a bedroom. There was something like a very small, narrow bed against the wall, farthest from the door, which had curtains or something draped above and behind it. Like an old-fashioned headboard, heaped around the bed were strange, fussy shapes that looked like flowers. "Shine the torch, Raj." His father's whisper had nothing in it but intense curiosity. Roger shone the torch, and they moved across the round open space toward the thing that looked like a little bed. Halfway across, they both stopped. It wasn't a bed, it was a coffin. It stood on trestles. The draperies veiled it and gave it an air of solemn mystery. The fussy shapes were wreaths, a lot of them. They were made of artificial flowers and beads. At the head and foot of the coffin were tall brass candlesticks the height of a man. Each had a thick candle on it. On the coffin itself stood a little statuette of the Virgin Mary. The whole tableau had the air of a shrine. "Dad!" exclaimed Roger out of a bone-dry mouth. What is it?" Instead of answering as he might have done. "It's a coffin. What does it look like?" His father understood the question and said hollowly, "I don't know, son. I just wish we'd never seen it. But we must find out. We must know who." "It's none of our business, Raj. Come on, let's get out of here." They turned to go, the torch swinging its faded light around to guide them. Then Roger let out a harsh cry. Monsieur Serpais was standing in the doorway. He had a gun in his hands. And that is the end of chapter 19.